and it 10 save him. Now, there is a very clear connection between the ruin poster and the save them minigame from FNAF 2. The text on the screen, at least to me, indicates that what we will have to do is save Gregory from whatever situation that he's in with Freddy. Since we know that eventually he does make it to that hill that he sits on in the true ending, in the Princess Quest ending. However, it could be possible that that scene in this case is just a dream, since it's more realistic than the other endings. That could also just be because it's the true ending and it's canon, but it's currently unclear. Obviously, if it's real, we will end up being successful, but it's possible that our character, whoever she is, will die in the process. I could also be drawing weird connections between things that aren't really linked, but that's always possible when theory crafting, at literally any point, so... And at 9, Robot Gregory. This poster, in my eyes, also helps prove further that Gregory is in fact a robot, since after all we get confirmation that Vanny messes up the cameras, as you can see from the 2 screens that have Vanny on them. They're both glitching out. This is further supported by our last point, because how would Gregory be able to add a help me sign to a screen without being able to access the cameras? Nowhere on our fast watch does it say that we can add text, and Freddy clearly doesn't have the ability, since he would have used it during the section where we have to open the doors for him so that we can then be a sussy baka and vent, instead of just, you know, standing there and waving. He could have had text flashing up on screen so that we can see him easily. Multiple people I watched play this had difficulty with this section, okay? Freddy just flashing some text on screen saying I'm here, especially when the player takes a while, would have established that he had this power, but they didn't. So unless they want to somehow retcon that in, it has to be that Gregory's controlling it. Most likely because he's a robot and he can just, like, tap into the cameras. And at 8, no more Freddy. There is also a possibility that Freddy is destroyed, or that he won't be in this DLC at all thanks to the statue we see on the poster. This poster could be an indication of what happened to Freddy after the pizzaplex's collapse. I mean, after all, the collapse did destroy Chica, right? So why couldn't it have destroyed Freddy too? Yes, he ends up on the hill with Gregory, but like I said, that could be a dream or a heaven of sorts, or it could be years after the actual ending of the game. We can't really be certain. Or at the very least, the game could be omitting Freddy and he won't make an appearance for whatever reason, hence why the statue is destroyed. I mean, like, look at it. This thing is in pieces, but why? There isn't much rubble around it, and the escalator walls are way less damaged than this, so why would the statue have been so heavily damaged if there was nothing that actually hit it? Seems a bit sus if you ask me. And at 7, 1 year later. With the DLC not releasing until 2023, the question remains of when in the timeline it will take place. Yes, it will take place after the true ending for Security Breach, but how long after the true ending is the question. See, with the state of the animatronics, it seems that it could be later on, and the release date being 2 years after the release of the original game means that it could be linear in the timeline sense, so it could also take place 2 years after the ending. But that would then bring on the question of why is Gregory back there if it's a year or 2 later? But then we also have to ask who is this girl and where they came from if we're really going to know this answer. So while there are theories, this one specifically coming from Amanda because of the release date, we still don't know for sure until we have some more information. Time to wait another 6 months before another teaser! And at 6, Chica Graffiti. While zooming in on Chica, like I always do, I did notice that her torso seems to have traces of red on it. Now, what this is in reality is definitely unclear, but it could be graffiti, indicating that this could be later on in the timeline. She could have been decommissioned for a while after being revived for whatever purpose, and maybe some kids got to her and decided to spray paint her. Or, more likely, it's actually pizza sauce. See, brightening the image while basic FNAF at this point is also still helpful, and I used it in the last Ruins video. However, while the red is evident on the normal poster, by brightening you can actually see that there is yellow dripping from Chica's face. And unless Chica started listening to Bear Grylls in order to survive the collapse of the pizzaplex, I'm pretty sure that it's melted cheese dripping from her mouth, which would also explain the red in tandem. I mean, it could be her beak, but like, we were trying to explain the red, so cheese makes sense. Like I said, it would mean that the red stuff would then be pizza sauce and potentially pepperoni or some other form of meat that the Pizzaplex kitchen would add on pizza. But it could also be blood. Not sure from who, but maybe Chica saved Vanny's life or something. Also, I was at Niagara Comic-Con 2 days ago, and there was a girl dressed as Chica. Didn't know who I was. It was kind of offensive. It was really humbling. Halfway through, into number 5, the FNAF ARG. This was brought up in a recent MatPat FNAF theory, and people are starting to suggest that it's going to be involved in this DLC. The basic idea that the FNAF Fazbear Frights books were originally going to have an ARG that Scott ended up cutting out for whatever reason, and then released part of it in the Felix the Shark book 12. However, I'm here to tell you guys that it's not real, okay? Scott has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't want to cross the line between fact and fiction, and that he wants to keep the two worlds separate, probably because FNAF relates so closely to Chuck E. Cheese. And that's also why he wouldn't really make a real FNAF location, okay? He stuck to this so hard that he didn't even make a website for the indie game dev introduced in FNAF VR like he wanted to, because he thought that it would be too fuzzy for the line, okay? So, look. There is no FNAF ARG, okay? If a website is too much, there is no bigger quest here. Last time we thought this, there was a restaurant that got harassed, and a pizzeria owner who just so happened to be named Mike also got harassed. So please, don't go out searching. If there was an ARG, I'm sure Scott would have said something about it, okay? So don't harass anyone, just stick to the games and the game files. Crack open FNAF 3's mobile game if you want to see if there's the image there. Just leave the real world locations and people alone. And at 4, simulation. It's also worth mentioning that there are multiple instances on the poster that feel unfinished. Now, I don't know if this was because the poster was rushed, which has seemingly been a trend with FNAF recently, or because they're simply mistakes, but I wanted to point out in case it has bigger implications. Like when I mentioned the last time we talked about this, the floor at the bottom actually cuts off, but the rocks on top of the floor don't. Mostly because at this point the ground without brightening had mostly faded into black, but the rock was still kind of visible. However, even unbrightened, you can see the clear divide between the tile and just pure black. You can also see that on the left, the floor does the same. And this is very clear in the original poster, okay? I mean, like, there's even a glowing rock sitting at the border. Oh, it's like glowing because it has reflecting light on it, but it also kind of reminds me of when an item is important, so it's highlighted in the game even if it makes it unrealistic. But the most interesting part in my eyes is the tree on the far right. The one in the back next to the escalator. The bottom 2 sections of it are blank, like they're just filled in with a black outline and then solid brown color. Like the artist had finished the color blocking and then forgot to finish the tree despite doing the rest of that tree. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but if it is, then could this be pointing to the entire thing being a simulation? Which would then bring up the question of how and who. Like maybe this is what Vanny is seeing in her head while Glitchtrap was taken over, so that she's still like the good guy in her head, so she's not fighting back against Glitchtrap's control. Or maybe it's Gregory still caught in his dream that started in 1983. Getting close to the end, into number 3, Prisoner. Now time to get to some theories about our blondie in the middle. Who is she? I made it a point last time to mention that she looked an awful lot like the middle silhouette of the 9 children who ended up going missing due to Vanny, and I still stand by that point. So the most realistic answer I have is that the missing children weren't actually dead, but they were rather trapped inside the building somewhere. Much like how Vanny in the very first trailer for the game said, "Gregory, your friends are here with me."
Gregory, your friends are worried about you. They're here with me. Please come out.
So clearly, Gregory must have known these children, right? Which explains why he came to the pizzaplex in the first place, but it doesn't explain how he never mentions them. Either way, this is a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just a missing child who, thanks to the collapse of the pizzaplex, managed to escape containment. But ultimately, in at number 2, Elizabeth Afton. Okay, this one is a bit wild, but hear me out. I also mentioned last time how both of these kids look like Aftons. Gregory is very clearly meant to at least be an allegory for crying child, okay? The stripes on the shirt, the age, the relationship with Freddy, it was right there in our faces. Whether you believe he is a robot or not, he is at least meant to represent crying child. And now, look at this girl. While she may be in black and white, she is still very clearly blonde. She has pigtails like Baby does, and we all know who Elizabeth ends up possessing. She's wearing a skirt exactly like Elizabeth was wearing in the one time we see her in Sister Location. I mean, if crying child's 2 stripes are enough for a comparison, I think this is more than enough. And then, look at her shoes. The lights are the only thing that has color on them, which is very clearly meant to have our attention. And then those lights are purple and red. Purple very clearly representing William Afton, and while last time I said that the red could be Vanny, Baby is absolutely covered in red. from the clothes to her hair. Red is all over that animatronic. Or it could be that this girl is evil, just like how Elizabeth always wants to impress her father. Just saying. It's not the craziest thing this series would have done. Okay, it would have been, okay, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Or again, they could have just been taken because they look like the kids. And finally, in at number 1, time travel. This one is crazy, I will admit, and it's most definitely not the case, but FNAF has already established time travel as possible in the very first Fazbear Frights book called Into the Pit. Remember that one? Where Oswald ends up jumping into a ball pit and somehow leaving 2011 and appearing in 1985 to witness the missing children's incident? Yeah, that story wasn't written for no reason. And where do we see the first ball pit that wasn't in a pizzeria that was simply meant to lure animatronics around? Oh, would you look at that? The Mega Pizzaplex. I'm just saying that time travel has already been established, and considering how sketchy Gregory is, I wouldn't put it past him from being from the future or something. There are actually 2 key indicators that point in this direction, at least in my mind. The therapy disc, where the therapist calls client 46 out on the lies about their home life, and the fact that when he leaves the pizzaplex in the worst ending, he sleeps in a cardboard box. The therapist in the tape says that 46, which I'm still certain is Gregory, has a great home life, but what they told their previous therapist was a lie. But if that is the case and his home life is great, despite saying his parents and him suffered some form of tragedy, how is it that he sleeps in a cardboard box? Like, his home life is great, but he sleeps in a box. Because it hasn't happened yet. The tragedy where he most likely loses his parents hasn't happened as of when the game takes place, which would mean that this girl could be Gregory's sister who came back to save him when he didn't return. Or he could be lying and instead using the name of someone he knows is a missing child in the future, which is why he can't go home. Or why the therapist describes him as writing down his past as if it was a story. Because it is a story, just not his. In the 10, Into the Pit. This is crazy, okay? I will admit, and it is 100% not what's going to happen, but FNAF has already established time travel as possible in the very first Fazbear Frights book, Into the Pit. Remember where Oswald jumps into a ball pit and somehow leaves his year, which I predicted was 2011 in a previous video, and then appears in 1985 to witness 5 children getting killed? Yeah, that story wasn't written for no reason, I think. And where do we see the first ball pit that isn't in a simulated pizzeria meant to just attract animatronics and not really kids? The Mega Pizzaplex. I'm just saying, alright, the time travel is already established and technically canon in the FNAF multiverse. And considering how sketchy Gregory is, I wouldn't put it past him from being from the future. There are 2 moments that in my head really solidify this as a possibility, albeit a wild possibility, but a possibility nonetheless. I mean, like the therapist disc where the therapist calls client 46 out about the lies about their home life, and then the fact that when Gregory leaves the pizzaplex in the worst ending, he sleeps in a cardboard box. Okay, the therapist in one of the tapes says that 46, which I'm still at this point at least kind of thinking is Gregory, had a great home life, but they told their previous therapist that they had a horrible one. But if that is the case and they have a great home life, how is that the case if he's sleeping in a cardboard box? Maybe because it hasn't happened yet. The tragedy where he most likely loses his parents hasn't happened when the game takes place. It happens in the future, which could mean that this girl that we play as could be Gregory's sister who came to save him when he didn't actually come back to their time. It's nuts, but it's possible. Anything is possible with FNAF at this point. In at 9, Friends. Now a theory about our little blonde girl in the middle of the poster, alright? Who is she? I made it a point last time to mention how she looked an awful lot like the silhouette of the 9 children who have gone missing due to Vanny, and I still stand by that. So, in my mind, the most realistic answer is that the missing children aren't actually dead. Or at least this time they aren't. That they were instead trapped inside the building somewhere, much like how Vanny in the first trailer says that Gregory, your friends are here with me, or something like that.
Gregory, your friends are worried about you. They're here with me. Please come out.
So clearly, Gregory, at least originally, knew these missing children, which explains why he came to the pizzaplex in the first place, but it doesn't explain how he never mentions them. Either way, it's a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just a missing child who is also one of Gregory's friends, that thanks to the collapse managed to escape whatever prison she was stuck in. And it ain't save him. Now there is a very clear connection between the Ruins poster and the Save Them minigame from FNAF 2. The text on that one screen, at least to me, indicates that we might have to save Gregory from whatever situation he's in with Freddy. Since we know that eventually he does make his way onto the hill that he sits in after the true ending and the Princess Quest ending. However, it could be possible that that scene we see just happens before and then he comes back, although I wouldn't see why he would come back. It's also possible that that's just a dream, since it's more realistic than the other endings. But, I mean, it could just be because the true ending is canon and that's why it's realistic, but you know what? Nothing is clear with FNAF. Obviously, if it's real, we will end up being successful for saving Gregory, but it is possible that we will die in the process. And you know what? Here's hoping. I don't want more children to keep track of. And at 7, save us. What if we're the ones who need help this time around? I mean, we have no idea who this person is and what they're doing, but maybe they're not one of the missing kids and they just also got trapped somehow as well. I mean, it's a question of how they would have gotten in, of course, and like, why are they exploring this place if it's destroyed and they're the size of a 4-year-old as well? But like, still, no idea why she could be in the pizzaplex, but my job isn't to theorize about why, but about what. This plot may end up being that we have to help Gregory save us so that he can show us the way out. Or the game is just going to be replayed as a new character with Gregory as our guardian telling us how to get around and get out of the pizzaplex, which might satisfy those of you who wanted the Choose Your Guardian DLC. I said it wasn't going to happen. It just didn't make sense to do, since like it would just be the same game again but slightly different, and I was right. And at 6, Bonnie's released. And while we may not be choosing our guardian, it's definitely possible that in this whole mess, Bonnie was released from whatever prison he was being held in. Or at least something like that could be possible. I mean, there are plenty of doors that we can only get behind if we had level 10 security clearance, which is impossible within the game. So those doors could have been opened or have just been destroyed in the collapse, which could explain how we get into these sections now that we probably aren't going around trying to collect security badges, if there are any even left remaining. But a security door level 10 would make much more sense since we have no idea what could be behind any of those doors. Maybe they kept Bonnie in some stasis chamber since he's a sentient AI that couldn't really be moved or something. I don't know, okay? It's FNAF. They'll come up with a scenario and a reason, and we won't really be able to fight it. That's just how it goes. Halfway through into number 5, Antagonist. We've played as the antagonist before, however the player we were was only an antagonist in the next game, not in the game that we were playing, meaning that this time we could be playing as an actual antagonist. I mean, Chica being in the poster either means that there is a connection or we're just being messed with, and recently I think we're always being messed with, so I'm gonna go with that, meaning that this little girl could possibly be Vanny. I mean, we know that Vanny does have a spirit within the building as we see in the rooftop ending, but could we actually be playing as her child spirit? I mean, it's possible. It wouldn't be the wildest thing that FNAF has ever done. Additionally, I mean, we could be the spirit found in Princess Quest because, like, come on, would that really be out of the question? At this point, I'm pretty sure Princess Quest is destroyed, so maybe it released something. It's not out of the question. It's unlikely, but it's not impossible. Okay, there's a difference there. It would explain why she's in black and white unless there's, like, light on her. So. And at 4, Chica's Revenge. Chica being on the poster though is not necessarily just for a distraction. It could be that it is meant to indicate that Chica is the reason all of this is happening. And honestly, after Niagara Falls Comic Con, I wouldn't put it past Chica. That's right, I'm still mad about it. I mean, after all this, it could be some form of twisted revenge for Gregory dismantling her in an attempt to escape originally. So could this girl be a manifestation of Susie, as an attempt to gain our trust and inevitably kill us? Or at least try to, at the very least, because, like, I mean, to be fair, if we think about it, we aren't going to kill Gregory or get Gregory killed, since after all, he does still need to make it up to the hill at the end of the Afton ending. So unless that happens and then he comes back, which seems unlikely given the help me text on the monitor and the fact that he just swore he would never do that, I feel like this is kind of possible. So could this all just be a manifestation trying to gain our trust? Probably not, but the more chica, the happier I am. Usually. Getting close to the end of number 3, Client 46. Could this new blonde girl actually be Client 46? The mysterious therapy client who never speaks, but we all thought was Gregory, or at least some of us, most of us thought was Gregory. I mean, honestly, it could make a lot of sense. It would explain why 46 would be talking to Vanny despite Gregory being afraid of Vanessa. It would explain how they could hack the animatronics but not be able to stop them by hacking them again like Gregory could have. It would explain how their home life was great despite their accounts of the past, since after all, Gregory does end up sleeping in a cardboard box. And it makes a lot more sense than he's a time traveler and the tragedy just hasn't happened yet. It would also explain why we never hear 46 talk, because it's a girl, and it would just make us think that it's Vanny or Vanessa instead of it being someone we hadn't seen before. Client 46 was a kid, as evidenced by multiple recordings, and they would be immune to the deaths of her therapist if she was talking to Vanny. But who could this mysterious girl be? But ultimately, in at number 2, Ghost. While yes, this girl could be 46, it's also possible that she is Elizabeth Afton, either as a ghost, which if she is 46 wouldn't really make sense, or she could be possessed by Elizabeth Afton's spirit. If we take a look at the blob, which does include Circus Baby, her eyes aren't lit anymore, meaning that the spirit is no longer in there. And considering how Afton's body still somehow survived, and we think that Michael managed to make his way into Glamrock Freddy, it would make sense that Elizabeth's spirit would survive as well, especially if she wanted to stick around to keep trying to impress dear old dad. Since in a previous video we came to the conclusion that Remnant can only be burned away if the spirit wants to be set free, or rather the burning doesn't really do anything and they're only released if they get their unfinished business completed, like the original Missing Children in the Happiest Day minigame getting that party. Elizabeth could be sent to gain Gregory's trust and then defeat him like she did in Sister Location, or maybe she's there to find her brother. And finally, in at number 1, Great Escape. The final potential plot would be a great escape story, where this blonde girl has come to the rescue of Gregory or has been released because she was trapped, and now she has to make a break for it while the building collapses around her. Will she save Gregory or will she only save herself? Multiple endings are not out of the question and kind of expected at this point, with one of them, the most difficult seemingly being the true ending, but who knows? Maybe none of these are right and we're all reading into this idea way too much, and our expectations are just going to ruin this DLC for us. That's right. I made the joke. You thought I was done making cringy jokes and puns. Hell to the no. I will always try and make terrible messages and jokes because that's just what I do. No matter where I am, terrible, unrelated, possibly offensive jokes are always being made. In at 10, non-canon. A lot of people were suggesting a simple fix that would have all of this make sense, and it would be just to make the DLC non-canon. And honestly, I don't think that that's even possible. Even if expressly stated that it was non-canon, after the last DLC claimed that it was nothing more than a festive holiday themed add-on with no hidden intent or purpose, and then giving us a whole load of hints towards the next game, none of us would trust Steelwool or Scott when they said that. No matter what, okay, we would still consider the DLC probably canon. And maybe that's something that we could actually deal with, since after all there is only one true ending to the game, assuming this doesn't take place before or after the story and we still play as Gregory in the game. So maybe this would actually still be possible, but any endings we end up getting wouldn't be the true ending still, and maybe the true ending would be impossible to get without Freddy. I mean, we could just play through the game until 6 AM and then be forced to leave and not have the option to stay. And at 9, New Kid. The DLC could easily be explained away by making us play as a new kid who ends up getting stuck in the pizzaplex for another reason, which would also explain why we aren't being protected by Freddy, who at this point would have run away with Gregory. They could have rebuilt Roxy's Raceway or maybe just have it off limits, and we could play through again using another character as our guardian, at least if they wanted to keep it canon. It would also show us that what Gregory fell into was intended on being a trap, hence maybe why Vanessa was sus of Freddy, but then after he gets out of parts and service, she doesn't dismantle him again, since that would make Gregory trust him. This could have been how all the children went missing, and this would have shown us that. But Gregory was the first one to make it out alive. This idea came from YouTube user Dank Meme in the comments of the Choose Your Guardian video, and that's where most of these ideas actually do come from, but if they're suggested by multiple people, I can't really show all of the comments, but from what I saw, Dank was the only one who suggested a new kid in a rebuilt pizzeria. And at 8, Sun and Moon. Multiple people were also saying that if this was a thing, they would want the sun or moon animatronic to protect them, which is just a whole new level of trauma. Like, that thing needs like a talking to by Chris Hansen or something, cause it's a creepy, like the fact that he will actively pick this 4-year-old sized kid out of a ball pit and then keep dragging you back to the same spot so you can't leave him is just a whole new level of crazy. Like, I get that he's an animatronic and he's not really capable of being a pedal bear, but like, come on. You have to admit, this guy has some creeper vibes, and I'm not talking creeper aw man vibes, I mean like prison predator vibes. Like, why would you want this thing to protect you? I guess we have to protect our investments, but like in this context, that's absolutely terrifying. Plus, Sun and Moon doesn't really have a reason to leave the daycare, and when they're in their moon form, they just want to put you back to bed. Okay, damn, I didn't actually realize how really creepy this thing was. I mean, like, his first words are naughty, naughty boy. So it should have been a dead giveaway. In its 7 Bonnie Bowl battle. I mentioned last time how Freddy doesn't really have a section for a boss fight, since most of the pizzaplex is named after other characters. Roxy's Raceway, Chica's Mazercise, Monty Golf, etc. But a few commenters had the idea that maybe Freddy could have his boss battle inside of Bonnie Bowl. I'm guessing because he was mourning the loss of Bonnie. I mean, it would kind of make sense, but the bowling alley doesn't really have much of a boss arena vibe. It doesn't really have the ability to house a boss battle, seemingly. Like with Monty, the boss battle made sense, at least in FNAF's way of making sense, but Freddy in a bowling alley? How are we gonna stop him like that? Get him to step on a bowling ball and fall backwards? I mean, it took Monty falling off a catwalk and getting smacked in the face by by a giant bucket for him to actually get destroyed. So how would a bowling alley with no net full of hanging bowling balls actually be able to help us beat him? I don't know. It's a nice idea, and I like the thought process as like an homage to Bonnie, but I unfortunately don't think it would work. And it's 6 Disguised. YouTube user Canis Rufus Lupus I like that name. YouTube user Canis Rufus Lupus suggested in the comments that instead of hiding inside the animatronics or riding on their shoulders, that instead Roxy and Chica could throw disguises over us in an effort to conceal our identity. As they put it, quote, "My suggestion was that Gregory would follow closely behind Chica or Roxy in disguise when you're controlling them. Chica would toss a cupcake blanket over the boy's head with eye holes, while Roxy would stuff the boy into a giant foam finger that says you're number 1. The security robots would be blind to him," which I think it's actually a really interesting idea, and that would certainly make for some hilarious moments. Like, imagine Roxy lifting up the cupcake blanket randomly while you're just like chilling with Chica, and then boom, you're done for. But also, this would kind of defeat the whole like power mechanic that they added to kind of nerf the whole glam rock mech thing in the first place. So I unfortunately don't think that they would go with this seemingly absolutely amazingly hilarious idea. But good thinking, Canis, I'm proud of you. That's outside the box, I like it. Halfway through into number 5, Guardian Vanessa. The idea that Vanessa could be your guardian is interesting, but considering how she is also the main antagonist, you'd be left alone for various parts of the game, which I mean is already the case with Freddy since he can't enter places like the West Arcade, but since, thanks to the CDs at the end of the game, we know that Vanessa knows there's something going on with her and that she knows Glitch Trap is watching, I don't really think that she'd try and help us in any scenario. Like, hell, if she was really trying to do her job, she would have opened the gate at the beginning of the game and then went on the intercom to tell us to get the f*** out. Plus, she locks us in the lost and found room, or security room, or whatever it is, knowing full well that her other half could take over at any moment and come after us. And look what it does. It takes over her and comes after us. She also says that she called the cops, but she clearly didn't. So I don't think Vanessa would be down to help us, unless she was doing it to try to be selfless when she's being controlled, but even if she was, Afton could take over and then just grab you instantly, so. And at 4, Custom Night. An idea brought to us by commenter Barbarian Goose, quote, "If anything, Steel Wool should add a custom night where you choose your guardian as like a little fan service with the main DLC." And I think that this could be a good idea. Not making the DLC revolve around that, but maybe making a small section where you play as another animatronic guardian. Or, but maybe they each get you out before the doors close at 12, or something similar so it wasn't the full game again, because if it is the full game, it's not a small section. Because if we're being being honest, like having to do this again for the whole game would be an absolute nightmare, and they already released the main game unfinished. So I think that a small section of story without the open world thing would be a nice way for fans to understand what would happen to the story if the various characters were our guardians instead of Freddy. Or maybe even as like a nightmare segment or something. Like if you choose to leave the pizzaplex at the end, instead of just getting killed by Vanny, we'd also have a nightmare about if one of the other animatronics was guarding us. Maybe an unplayable cutscene or a small playable section, just to make the fans who want this idea to happen happy. But again, it would increase the whole Gregory writing Foxy art just a little too much in my eyes. Getting close to the end in number 3, Phaser Blast Battle. While some people were saying that Freddy's boss battle would be at Bonnie Bowl, others suggested a battle at Phaser Blast. There, you happy I said it right for once, but I like saying Phaser, so leave me alone. Which does kind of make sense, since it's seemingly the only location aside from the pizzaplex itself to really be connected to Freddy directly. And while you do have to go there for the story as well, I guess it's possible that they add a boss battle in here instead of playing the normal Phaser Blast game. Like, you know, like how they had it when like Chica was running through there, but instead this time it could be Freddy and we had to handle him. It wouldn't be as awesome of a fight as Freddy would really deserve, but it would kind of make sense given that it would really feel like the animatronics were trying to stop you. But it would really make one section of the game easier, just like if this battle was in Bonnie Bowl. Since we have to go here for the story, getting the Phaz camera would just be easier in the long run, since it doesn't end up in a boss battle. In my opinion though, the Phaser Blaster is better, so maybe it would be a way to balance the game easier. And number 2, character endings. I feel like the concept of additional endings was already obvious, but I did see multiple comments suggesting character-specific endings, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, in the end, there would still only be one canon ending, so maybe this kind of DLC wouldn't really do much harm. But with everyone reading into everything so much, I still think that this would cause more problems than it solves, like I said earlier. However, the character's specific endings, while not being the canon ending, could help provide more insight into the canon of the actual story. Like if Monty's ending revealed a bit about what happened to Bonnie, or if Roxy ends up breaking down emotionally or something. I don't know how she contributes to the main story. And I think that Chica's ending would just be her getting all the pizza of her dreams. And of course, having me by her side, the man of her dreams. I don't know why all of you are suddenly like so for Roxy, but Chica's my main girl, and I'm not letting anyone take that away. Not even you, narrator, alright? You guys can have the self-centered, egocentric Roxy, because that's not the Afton virus doing that. That's just the personality of the animatronic. So you can deal with someone who loves the mirror more than they love you, and I'll be with someone who loves pizza just as much as I do. It's called priorities, okay? And finally, in at number 1, Roxy's hair. Now, an overwhelming amount of comments were saying that Gregory could hide in Roxy's hair instead of chilling on her shoulders. But they didn't know how he would hide in Chica. So I figured it was a worthy number 1 spot. I mean, like, Roxy does have long hair, right? Well, yes, but the thing is, I see multiple issues with this that just make this idea seemingly impossible to me. Firstly, if Roxy's hair is meant to be like actual flowing hair and strands in universe, there would be nothing for Gregory to really hold on to unless he was holding onto her neck or something, which would be an interesting mechanic, since if you're around the other animatronics for too long, maybe they'd see Gregory's arms or feet poking out from behind you. But also, have you ever had hair in your face? Whether it's dog, a significant other, your own, having hair in your face is one of like the worst feelings ever, especially if it's unwanted. And Gregory wouldn't want that, assuming that he isn't simping for Roxy like all of you nasty motherfuckers are in the comments, okay? Y'all are simping harder than Will Smith. That's all if her hair was actual individual strands, but looking at the gameplay, it doesn't seem to be. It's multiple different seemingly plastic long triangles that end up making up her hair, and I doubt that you'd be able to climb inside that without cutting yourself up more than Afton in a spring-lock suit. So unless they just didn't want to simulate Roxy's hair physics, I don't think that this is possible. Unless you are all saying this because it's like a kink thing, which is unfortunately very possible. Well, as far as we can, since the pizzaplex, or at least part of it, seemingly gets destroyed at the end of the true ending. So, when we choose to stay, is it possible for Burn Trap to have more of an impact? Well, it's not as clear as you might think. See, Burn Trap, at this moment, is sat in the FNAF 6 pizzeria that's underneath the pizzaplex, charging in his charging station. However, he only seems to come out of it when ourselves, along with Gregory, jump down into the final area. So, to make this DLC possible, well, we would have to have him wake up for some other reason. Now technically it's unknown if when we drop down Afton ironically wakes up at the same time or if we triggered it somehow, but given that it's FNAF, I'm guessing that us triggering it is more probable and more in line with what the series story was intended to be. So for this DLC to include him, Afton would need to wake up for some other reason, be it maybe a power surge or something that messed with his power supply or potentially gave him a boost that he needed to get out of the charger early. Now that Afton is out of his charger for whatever reason, assuming that that's where the story goes, what could the possible DLC stories be? Well, I'm guessing that Burntrap would somehow be able to get back into the pizzaplex, despite Freddy telling Gregory that the elevator would only be good for one trip. But who knows, maybe that's because of Gregory and Freddy's weight combined or something like that. Maybe with just Afton in it, it would be able to make more than one trip, since after all it is how the animatronics were getting down to dig the tunnel in the first place, right? Anyways, Afton probably would get back up and then start roaming around the pizzaplex, probably corrupting anything that he could. This would probably lead to another ending where we would either defeat Burntrap in the pizzaplex or then maybe have to lure him back down into the basement. But in my eyes, in my mind, I think that we should have to lure him down to the parts and service room. Mostly because Vanessa told us to come to the main stage once we got into the elevator when trying to escape after you get Roxy's eyes. But if you listen to Vanessa, then go check the stage. There's nothing there for you. It just seems to be a time waster so that Moondrop has a better chance of getting you. But in my eyes, this seems like more of a game mechanic thing than an in-game thing. Like in the game universe, all he would need to do to catch you is just make it to you instead of waiting until it's exactly 1 hour. So there would have to be some reason that she called you there in the first place, right? Well, maybe it's because that's where Burntrap was, and now we gotta bring him down to parts and service to dismantle him and end his spree for good. Maybe we can get some main antagonist action where the animatronics roaming the pizzaplex are instead replaced with the main villains of Burntrap and Vanny. Kind of like Nightmare Fredbear, Nightmare, or Nightmarion style, since those characters also replaced all of the villains in FNAF 4 when they were out. This would definitely make Vanny and Burntrap seem more powerful and important than the other animatronics, especially if this only happened once we destroyed all three, since then we would assume that they were kind of tossed aside or forgotten since they didn't really work anymore. And I think that this would also help Burntrap be more menacing, because honestly, looking at him, this is the scariest design for Afton yet. This is the most terrifying version of Springtrap that we have ever had, and we don't actually have to or get to interact with him directly. We don't have a reason to really be scared of him. He doesn't chase us, he doesn't have any real power over us, we burn him from a distance through monitors while pressing buttons, and he only tries to take control over Freddy instead of coming after us, which is what helped us think of this character as a waste. But having him chase us around the pizzaplex would be an excellent way of making him more unique and terrifying, especially if periodically he would cause us to be forced out of Freddy while trying to take him over, and the only way that we could save Freddy would be maybe to press another button at a save station, or maybe try to activate a save station or something like that, something that could possibly jam Afton's frequency or signal or something along those lines. Making Afton a bigger villain would definitely be a better way to go in my eyes, because this man was underused and really kind of wasted in this way, especially if they do decide to kill him off permanently, since now he's just sentient code after having his soul burnt out of FNAF 6's fire. But having him chase us around the pizzaplex and making the Freddy mech useless at times and really just being a horrifying antagonist would really help sell how terrifying this version was intended to be, and something I feel should have been in the base game, since, you know, he's the most iconic character in the entirety of the FNAF series, you know, purple guy, the main killer, something that was teased in the very first trailer and then yet maybe had 5 minutes of screen time, unless you're bad at the game like I am, and then in that case he had like 30 minutes to an hour of screen time. And don't even get me started on how horrible his death was, if that was even a death. Killing this man off screen is probably the rudest thing I think Scott could do to me. Like, I want to see this man, and this man being William, die. I want to be the one who causes it. I want to see the light leave his eyes. I want to see that last bit of code float into the air with his demonic purple eyes and then dissipate. Okay, I want to watch him suffer. It's the least that he deserves. Plus, with Burntrap and Vanny roaming the pizzaplex, maybe we could actually figure out what happened to those other missing kids that potentially drew us to the pizzaplex to begin with. I mean, Vanny says in the first trailer that they're supposed to be our friends, right? Like, I don't know, maybe she got to Gregory's orphanage, or like kind of like raided it with a bunch of animatronics. Man, like a World of Warcraft raid, but with animatronics. I don't know. Like, maybe this is the way that Vanny's room above Phaser Blast would be open for closer inspection without the Phaser Blast ending button. Maybe there's an additional secret room or duffel bag or like a present with some story lore that points to what really happened to those kids, and then we can actually go and try and figure it out. If they were killed maybe, or kidnapped, or used to fuel Afton. I mean, this could be a really good way for the story to really establish itself, since, you know, the game was released unfinished despite being a couple of years late. Maybe something like this was always intended, but since there were so many delays, we had to deal with an underused and hardly terrifying antagonist despite the ability to make him so much more. But then again, maybe I'm just enthusiastic and expecting too much from these games, which may or may not be a bad thing. There we have it, friends. Will we see Burntrap in the FNAF Security Breach DLC? I honestly think that it's possible, and it would make much more sense than any other character we've talked about. And I hope that we get more with this character, because he's the first version of Afton that actually scares me. Firstly, based off of what we're expressly told in-game, it could actually be possible. All we really know is that Bonnie ended up going into Monty Golf around 4 AM, and then that was the last place he was seen. Quote from the duffel bag. Security report, 12:24 AM. Bonnie is seen leaving his green room in Rockstar Row heading east towards the atrium. 2:40 AM. Bonnie enters the East Arcade. 4:12 AM. Bonnie enters Monty Golf. That's the last of a repaired Bonnie that we ended up seeing, since in another bag we learned, quote, with Bonnie out of commission, we are making Monty the new bass player. Parts and service has already done the proper adjustments. This could be a good thing. Monty could be even more popular than Bonnie. Which, in combination to the fact that Bonnie was last seen in Monty Golf, suggests that Monty is the culprit behind Bonnie's destruction. Which is odd, in my opinion, because like we know Monty loves smashing things, so like that's not the weird part about this. My thought is, where was Monty chilling before he moved into Rockstar Row? Like, we don't see any real living quarters in Monty Golf, and the only other animatronics that we see outside of the core 4 is the daycare attendant, who has his own room above the ball pit. So, where could Monty have been staying if not in Rockstar Row? Anyway, if Monty is to blame for the destruction of Bonnie, we could see Bonnie come back in the DLC. But unfortunately, it wouldn't be really to get revenge on Monty, since we see that Monty does indeed face justice. At least, justice if he was guilty for the crimes. And if not, then it was just destruction. There is another theory, however, that could counter this point if it's true. The idea that Glamrock Bonnie's endo was used to create the new body that Afton inhabits in the true ending, Burntrap. Now, we've covered this in another video, link to that is in the iCard, but in that video we came to the conclusion that the entire endo wasn't used, since the shoulders on Burntrap aren't wide enough compared to the male Glamrock endos. And the fact that Afton's muscle fibers, or nerves, again, still not quite sure what they are still connected, would prove that it's the old suit. But there are sections where the fibers are blocked, like on the left foot and left arm. Both things that he was missing, or were more damaged at the time, while in his scrap trap form, seemingly suggesting that perhaps these specific parts came from Glamrock Bonnie instead of the whole endoskeleton. Maybe they were the only parts that they could use after Monty had his fun. Maybe they cut Monty off from destroying the rest of him, hence why he starts smashing his green room. We're not sure, and frankly the latter is just speculation, but it's still interesting. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me. But I think I might have found a way to make it work, like, like I said, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure, but if this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, again, it would need to have broader shoulders, and actually it would need to be shorter, unless they're like using the female endo for Bonnie, which wouldn't really make sense, so I don't think that they would, especially if they're going to give Bonnie shoulder pads. But I mean, like, even if we scale them so they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same way, and I'm comparing to like an actual endo, not the Glamrock Bonnie fan art, they still don't line up. And I mean, there are similarities between the two, of course, but there aren't enough where I can even call this above 50%. There are also issues of, again, the muscles being woven throughout the body. If it was just the head, I would understand, since they could have just put the old head on a new endo body, but with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's too intricate to have been placed there. Even if they were, they would be dangling. They would just be hanging out, unless they had been stuck there like with super glue. Because like they were deep in there, because you know, he was shoved full of machine parts. So yeah, if Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of the body bits. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with they added the arm and the leg on after the fact. But what would that mean for Glamrock Bonnie? Well, it would mean that if decommissioning Bonnie was a part of Vanny's plan to resurrect Afton, there would really be no Bonnie available that you could bring back, since he would really just be decommissioned. And while the other animatronics do come back, losing a leg and an arm is worse than your legs, your eyes, or just being smashed, since he wouldn't really be able to hop around on one leg despite being a bunny, and since he only had one arm, he wouldn't really be able to crawl like Monty does. So, I mean, I suppose the DLC could instead just be replacing Monty with Glamrock Bonnie, but that's achievable with mods, so there isn't really a point to making that a paid DLC, since we would all just opt into modding the game for that experience. Plus, certainly the model they use for Bonnie wouldn't end up being the one added to the mod instead of the current one, so at this point we'd need a solid DLC to actually make it worth it. With that being said, however, Bonnie being decommissioned might actually impact his presence in the game, but not to the story, since the DLC could be, like I've suggested before in other videos, a series of missions that involve us investigating his disappearance, possibly as a favor to Freddy, since he really seemed to miss Bonnie. Like, he was pretty sad when he was saying that there's no bunny in this pizzaplex, not anymore. That was my Freddy impression. Maybe it would even be because Freddy was already investigating it or something like that, saying that he knows Monty's been giving him side-eye and wanted to know if that Monty would be coming after Freddy next, since after all, Monty is stronger than Freddy, at least until we break Monty's brains in with a giant bucket filled with balls, which is a total hazard, by the way. I mean, like, come on. The giant bucket that we used to crush Monty is such a issue for health and safety for both employees and for customers, because like, if a 6-year-old kid with a 4-year-old's body can use it to destroy an animatronic, how safe is it going to be for literally anyone else? Like, what's the point of the bucket anyway? Like, is it supposed to contain water? Because like, when it falls on Monty, it breaks the catwalk that we're on. And honestly, water, especially in that quantity, is going to be a lot heavier than some ball pit balls filled with air. Seriously, who the living hell thought that this was going to be a good idea? Or like, how have they not gotten fined for it yet? Or like, how have they not fixed it if they have gotten fined? Yeah, there are guardrails on the catwalk, but that doesn't matter if there's a giant bucket that can destroy the catwalk that you're standing on and then cause you to fall to your death. Especially when falling that distance just like severed Monty's legs from his torso. Anyway, sorry, rant aside, maybe once Freddy has Monty's hands, we're able to investigate the rest of what happened to Bonnie. Maybe we get into Monty's green room and then kind of like suss out what went wrong. And no, that was not an Among Us joke, despite me constantly making Among Us jokes about this game because Gregory is sus, he vented. But like, maybe in the end, we would find Bonnie's casing with a missing arm and a missing leg, and then we would know for certain that I'm right. Now, do I think that this is going to happen? Really? I'm not sure. Like, a lot of people seemingly want to see Bonnie in this game, so much so that they are replacing Monty using mods, but also the idea for the Choose Your Guardian DLC is also very popular, and perhaps even more popular than the others. However, since we know DLCs to be canon add-ons, I'm guessing that a Bonnie investigation would be more likely than switching up the robot who protects us, since honestly, the whole Bonnie thing has less lore implications in the long run. Having someone other than Freddy protect us just seems like it would be too messy, especially with the fact that we would have to steal the other bits from the animatronics, and if we pick Roxy, then we have her eyes the entire game, which is kind of cheating. But like, you know, you get it? You do understand what I mean here? Like, I like the idea, but it's probably just gonna have to be a mod instead of actual canon DLC, okay? I hate to say it, even though I say it every time I talk about this mod. At 10, Ruin. We know that the main title of the DLC is going to be Ruin. Now, whether this will be referencing my opinion of the series or the actual state of the pizzaplex is unknown, but based on the poster, it's possibly both, because the pizzaplex looks absolutely destroyed. The Freddy statue from the lobby is in pieces, and there is plenty of rubble all over the ground, and you can see the walls next to the escalators are actually pretty banged up. It's not clear if this is exactly how the lobby will look, since this is just an illustration, not a screenshot from the game, but it is still possible. They could design the damage around this poster, or they could have taken a screenshot and then had someone illustrate it instead, which is entirely possible. But given that this is going to be released in 2023, I doubt that they have stuff made properly for it. They may still be working out the storyline at this stage. And at 9, Free. The name of the DLC may be Ruin, but I'm damn glad it won't ruin my wallet. Especially when the main game was oddly enough in ruins and still cost me $50. And this was before I started buying cheap frozen meals to feed myself, so I was pretty broke. But honestly, I'm pretty glad that this DLC is free, especially with the amount of mods that are probably going to come from it. And it's also probably an attempted apology from Steel Wool since, like I said, the original game was so busted and unfinished when it originally came out. Did you know that despite being incomplete, the original game uncompressed was 86 gigabytes? That's a bigger game size than Skyrim, for God's sakes. That's around the game size, or like a file size, or maybe even a little more than Grand Theft Auto 5. That's absolutely insane. And now it's around 62 uncompressed, which is nicer, and it's 41 compressed. But still, goddamn, that's a lot for not that big of a game when you really think about it. And at 8, 2023. Yes, as I said earlier, the DLC will not be releasing until 2023, which is unfortunate, but it could actually be a good thing. Firstly, it gives me at least another 8 months of DLC themed content before it actually releases, if it is released in January and then the hype dies down for it. But it could also mean that the DLC will be even bigger and better than any previous one, like adding just a couple of more nightmare animatronics or a couple of more levels. However, this also raises the question of, is this the case, or are they just taking their sweet time because all of this is a free DLC? Like, can we really expect to play something huge for free? I doubt it. Like, the only reason it might be free though is because it's affiliated with Scott. But after Scott stepping down, I don't really know how Steel Wool would handle this kind of thing if they were doing it on their own, so I can't really say for sure. And at 7, Vanny Cam. We can also see 6 monitors on the poster which have multiple images of security cameras and Gregory on them. Across the 6 monitors, there are 4 total images that appear, with the bottom 2 being the odd ones out, and the 4 above that being 2 different images. One of Gregory looking surprised, and another of Vanny looking at the security camera that's glitching out. Very reminiscent of the iconic Bigfoot image that's very blurry, where he's walking like this. And I think that this is actually one of Scott's clever tricks, like how he used the keypad in Sister Location to tell us that Crying Child and FNAF 4 take place in 1983. I think that Scott or Steel Wool is doing the same thing with this poster. By glitching Vanny out on screen, they're showing us that either A, Vanny was the entity that Gregory was talking to that was mentioned in the therapy tapes, or B, that Gregory having his vision glitch out when she is nearby is due to Gregory being a robot. It could be either, but it could also be both, considering how these are both next to pictures of Gregory looking surprised, and they're on both sides of the screen. 2 pictures, 2 eyes. This is the real 2-eye theory. And at 6, brightness. As always, the first thing you do when you see any FNAF promo art or any image that's related to FNAF at all, you go and brighten it to find more details or maybe even some secrets. And the first thing that I noticed is that there aren't any question marks on this poster. Thank God. But there's also quite a few things that got revealed to me. Firstly, at the top there are actually 2 windows on the poster instead of the one that just seems to show up in the original. These windows also look like they are angry eyes, which could indicate an overarching villain. There are also a very faint set of eyes in the top right corner as well, aside not including the ones on the left that are clearly visible, but the ones on the right could just be an anomaly since they are very faint. And I also see that the girl in the middle doesn't have any color on her aside from her shoes. More on that later. And the floor also cuts off at the bottom, but the rocks on top of them don't. Mostly because at this point the ground has pretty much faded into black, but the rocks would still kind of be visible. But seriously, this girl is in black and white. Halfway through, in at number 5, collapse. One of the big questions we, or at the very least I, had after Security Breach was what part of the pizzaplex collapsed after the cave-in during the true ending. And it was really up in the air whether it was the entire pizzaplex or just Roxy's Raceway. I guess they kinda left it that way depending on what they wanted to do. But this poster and the title confirms that the pizzaplex itself is in ruins. The whole place is a ruin. The giant Freddy statue from the lobby is destroyed and there's rubble everywhere. There are still some questions, of course, like it is just an illustration after all. How's the rest of the pizzaplex doing, for instance? What happened to the other animatronics? What's the main goal of this DLC? But while the latter may have been answered thanks to another detail from the poster, I don't think we'll have any answers for a while. The DLC doesn't come out until next year, which is absolutely insane, but at least it's free. In at 4, eyes. And while Gregory's eyes may be robotic, there's another set that I would like to point out in this Security Breach Ruins poster. The red eyes in the top left corner of the screen. Now, this is very clearly Vanny, but since I've seen a few people get confused by this, let me explain why. The eyes are red, which we only really see Vanny have, since Burntrap's eyes glow purple, and the animatronic eyes don't really glow. We also know that Vanny might have been able to survive the collapse due to her being controlled by Afton, but also because she was able to be on the roof before us when the fire starts in the rooftop ending. I mean, she gets pushed off the roof by Freddy, but we know that she was up there before us somehow, so I'm sure that she would have found a way around a collapse. Plus, if she's on the security cameras and the other showcased person is Gregory, who we know is alive, it just makes sense for Vanny to be alive. Plus again, red eyes. And they're in a similar position to where Vanny was placed in her first poster appearance as the Shadow. You know, like the one where Freddy's rocking out and then there's like a bunny chick with a knife that we were like, who's that? Yeah, it's in roughly the same area. It's not in the same place exactly, but it's in the same vicinity. Getting close to the end in number 3, Busted Chica. Now, when I make jokes about rearranging Chica's guts, this is not what I meant. Yes, that's right, my main girl Chica also makes an appearance on this poster as probably the most resilient animatronic in the group, because she's still kicking, despite being crushed by a trash compactor and then a building, and still having most of her smoking hot bod. Some of it was removed and cracked, but her face also has seemingly melted due to possibly the fire we were using to kill Burntrap, or maybe just because a fire started in the kitchen when the building collapsed. She's also lost the lower half of her left arm, her left, not your left, remember that, don't make my mistake, and she's also lost her right leg warmer. The casing for her midriff and her right arm is gone, but other than that, she's fairly intact, at least compared to Monty. Also, interestingly enough, only Chica's white face melted, meaning that it looks like someone, spilt frosting all over her face. I guess that takes the term busted to a whole new level. But ultimately, in at number 2, Help Me. Very reminiscent of the Save Them minigame from the earlier FNAF games. I'm pretty sure it's FNAF 2. You can see Gregory's face on the bottom left monitor with the phrase "Help Me" underscore written in green lettering. This seems to me to indicate that we may have a potential plot idea brewing where we need to save Gregory and Freddy after the collapse of the pizzaplex, but we know that Gregory and Freddy sit on the hill in the final shot alone in the true ending, meaning that if we do end up having to save him, our player character will most likely die in the process. This also means that we will not be playing as Gregory, but more on that in a moment. The underscore here could also be another indication of Gregory being a robot, but it could also potentially just be a reference to a file within the main game or within the DLC that could contain some secret information. But I have no idea if that's true, that's just speculation for the time being. I'm gonna have to look in through the actual Security Breach game files before the game comes out to see if there was an update that added one of those files, since underscores are primarily used for putting spaces in file names without actually needing spaces. Or it just could be that we need help in this case. Finally, in at number 1, Blondie. We do also see a new character on this poster, one we have never seen before. The little blonde girl holding the flashlight that is illuminating this entire scene. She's short, blonde, and wearing light-up Skechers like the girl boss she is. But she is also presumably our player character, given that she is front and center. Now, as to whether we are looking for Gregory or if Gregory is looking for us is one thing, but I have a slightly wild idea that could help explain. The pigtails is very reminiscent of Baby, but this girl has blonde hair. And while we may not be able to see her face, I think that she may also have green eyes, because anyone with blonde hair makes me instantly think of Elizabeth Afton, who gets grabbed by Baby in 1983 and goes on to possess the animatronic. Now, given that we've made the comparisons of Gregory to Crying Child in the past, and the very familiar nature of this blonde girl, I think I have a reason why all these children have gone missing. Because they look like the original Afton children. Think about it. This girl looks a lot like the middle silhouette from the original Missing Children's article in The Worst Ending for Security Breach, and the rest of these children look similar to each other, at least using their silhouettes, because that's all we really have. Plus, look at her light up Skechers, okay? Red and purple lights. I'm sorry, but when have we seen purple and it hasn't been an indication of Afton? Plus, the red is exactly like Vanny's eyes. This has to be one of the 9 missing children, right? That got released thanks to the collapse of the pizzaplex? Like, come on. That has to be it. In at 10, Foxy's return. Foxy was also missing along with Bonnie this time around. However, with the inclusion of Roxy, who seems to be like the Sephora version of Foxy, we didn't really seem to miss them all that much, especially since Roxy also runs hella fast, basically just being a gender-swapped form of the lovable Fox. However, seeing Foxy make a triumphant return could be an interesting concept for a DLC. Maybe he was having a form of like lover's spat with Roxy, and then that's why she keeps telling herself that she's beautiful and the best because Foxy broke her heart or something. I don't know. I don't think that they would do that just because of all the horrific fan art that it would generate. Like, yeah, of course there is already fan art about this, but having it confirmed as canon would make everyone go absolutely nuts. God, I'm actually shaking at the thought of that. That sounds like a horrible idea. Anyway, lots of fans have already modded or put Foxy into the game some way or another, so clearly it's an in-demand idea. And honestly, if we did something like the whole missing animatronics showed up for a full-on battle royale with the new ones, I think that would be epic as hell. Freddy Mech for the win. In at 9, Arcade Conspiracy. That's right, I'm talking about this again. The Arcade Conspiracy gets its name from one of the lore duffel bags that we can find, where we learn that something else seems to be going on here. I'm gonna keep making that joke every single time. Quote from the Arcade Conspiracy note. Exit interview. They are working together, the arcades. They're hiding something. The glitches. Glitch them all at the same time. Then the princess will recognize me. She's testing me. I am not yet worthy. The others are protecting it. Let me stay. I am so close. Just one more night. Please. I can save the princess. Now it's clear that this seems to be referring to the Princess Quest games. However, it doesn't seem like we have to glitch out those arcade cabinets in order to get their ending. We just have to beat them in order from 1 to 3, and then boom, we save Vanny. So what could this really mean? Well, there are 3 other arcade machines that seem to be having mysterious glitches, or there's something wrong with them as well. The Balloon Boy World game that you can find in the secret room in the theater, Chica's Feeding Frenzy, which won't turn off even when unplugged, that you're supposed to be able to find in the bakery, and the Monty Golf A arcade game that is, according to its duffel bag, shouldn't be in the mini golf area, but somehow is. However, while you can play both Balloon Boy World and the Monty Golf game, Chica's Feeding Frenzy isn't actually playable. You can only access it using a mod menu that lets you cheat it in from the main menu. So, adding in this arcade cabinet could mean that there's something bigger going on here than a simple DLC, which honestly I would love. And currently my my high score is still 14 for Monty Golf, where the lowest score is 13, so still feel pretty good about that. In at 8, VR. I don't care how many of you are against it, I am actively hoping that, like how Help Wanted got a flat screen version, that Security Breach will get a VR version, or port, or whatever you want to call it. Is it likely? No. Do I want it? Yes. This game was pretty fun normally, okay? But in VR, I think that this would be one of the most intense and exhilarating VR games that I've played. Aside from Blade and Sorcery, but that's just because it awoke something within me. Some of the cutscenes would need to be modified, probably by giving us a third-person perspective instead of the normal first-person. But other than that, I think it would be incredible. Like, imagine playing Phaser Blast in VR against Mommy Chica. Bro, all the Vanny simps would let themselves get killed. And then I could have some fun walking around as Freddy, pretending to be invincible and punching animatronics. I really want this, okay? It may be complicated to do, but I'm willing to wait, damn it. But exploring the pizzaplex in VR is kind of goals. I know that there are like VR chat and rec room maps that let you do this, but they're not the real deal, man. Combine this with some of the other ideas on this list and oh boy, would it be an amazing experience. Whoa, doggies. I know that they said they wouldn't do it, okay, but Scott says a lot of stuff that he doesn't mean, so. And at 7, secure and neutralize. Now the secure and neutralize concept comes from Knitter user the Silver Sea, and how they describe it is basically a pacifist route, where instead of playing through the story and destroying the other animatronics, you'd instead be able to befriend them and remove them from the game, basically. At certain points in the animatronic boss fights, you'd be able to choose whether or not you commit to the destruction of the animatronic, and if you choose not to, the pacifist route would start. After choosing not to kill, you'd strategize about how to take the animatronic down, which would already be determined in the story, but like for story purposes you'd have to figure it out. Maybe Freddy would offer a suggestion. Then you'd remove the CPU that Afton is using to control the animatronic out of their back, and the animatronic would reboot. After rebooting, they'd have no memory of what happened, and then you'd be able to leave them back to Rockstar Row and put them in their changing station or green room for the rest of the game. This concept is actually pretty interesting, and if you want to read more about it and get more in detail that I can't actually get into in this video because it's a top 10, the link for this will be in the description if I can remember. If not, yell at me in the comments. And at 6, Daycare Redo. The Daycare Redo DLC concept comes to us from FNAF wiki user Glitched Morals, saying that they came up with a side quest with benefits called the Daycare Redo. Quote from the post, here's how it works. Instead of being pushed out of the slide when attempting to go back into the daycare after being banned, there is an option to talk to the son. Gregory can apologize for breaking the rules and ask if there is anything that he can do to make it up to him. Son will send Gregory on a few missions to do certain things, like bring back a certain item to him or clean up the play structures that he knocked down. They will need access to a cleaning or janitor pass, which can be obtained from a present box. And if Gregory does all of these missions, he will have Son's trust back, which will result in a few benefits. He will have full access to the daycare again, which will have extra secrets and collectibles to actually have the full access be worth it. Play structures are now new hiding spots for hiding from animatronics. You'll have access to a new room that is the daycare storage room. In that room is extra structures and toys that are found in the daycare. Presents and duffel bags will also be in this room. Son will give Gregory a daycare night pass, which will result in the moon no longer chasing Gregory anymore, even when the lights are off. And Son can be interactable, and with him, Gregory can watch different movies in the fast theater, play hide and seek, and other mini games. Honestly, this seems like a pretty solid idea, and actually a pretty interesting one, so good job, Glitch Morals. The link to this post will also be in the description, if I can remember. Halfway through into number 5, multiplayer. Now, with a working pizzaplex, there comes the idea that doing this with friends would be an amazing time. And honestly, this is one of the things we've been wanting for ages. When a multiplayer FNAF didn't really make sense before, a working pizzaplex would make the most sense. Being able to explore the pizzaplex during the day with friends and even random people online would be awesome. And honestly, if this isn't in a FNAF DLC, I'm sure someone's going to make this happen in VR chat or rec room or something like that. I mean, like, there's already a mod, but that's where you play as animatronics, and I just want a whole load of kids running around the pizzaplex, you know, being able to play all the games. However, if this was in the real FNAF game, I think it would be the most beneficial. However, VR chat is a free game that you don't need VR to play, despite what the name would suggest, so it would be better for fans unless this came out as like a free DLC of some sort. Which honestly, considering how the game was released unfinished, a lot. A DLC that fixed things and then actually gives us multiplayer would actually be nice if it was free, especially if it's just fixing issues, okay? Anyway, a multiplayer pizzaplex would be perfect. And at 4, daytime mode. Being able to explore the pizzaplex during the day is something that I think we can all agree we'd love to see. Being able to actually play these games without the ominous threat of death would be a great addition to this game. I want to play laser tag without having to worry about Chica chasing me, okay? Unless she's chasing me in a romantic way because someone wanting me that bad is kind of goals. But for real, the ability to just mess around the pizzaplex during the day would certainly be fun. No restrictions, just full passes or whatever. Or maybe we have to earn tickets to pay for the passes by playing the various arcade games. I think that would be pretty damn cool. Combine this with the multiplayer mode and this would be crazy. Although I guess multiplayer mode would kind of imply that it's during the day since the story doesn't really allow for multiplayer. So let's just assume the daytime mode would just be you on your own. The single player daytime experience, which sounds like a really bad sitcom. Like not one that's so bad it's good, but just like a bad sitcom. mostly because of the name. Getting close to the end, in number 3, Burn Trap. With everything that was left up in the air about Burn Trap's ending, us being unsure whether he's actually dead or if the blob decided to save him, getting to see more of Burn Trap or even more of Burn Trap's story, maybe some explanations as to what happened in between the games, or maybe even some potential backstory to the character of William Afton, would surely be greatly appreciated by the community. If there's anything that I've learned by talking about this series every day for a year, the community doesn't like talking about any theory that isn't what they've already believed to be true, and they'll consider these theories canon and proven despite them not actually being confirmed. So, literally anything getting confirmed about this character would be a win in my eyes, especially if we finally get to see William officially die on screen. You have no idea how much I would love to watch William finally kick that sweet bucket on screen. Huh. Better than any orange YouTube video ever. But ultimately, in at number 2, Inspector Gregory. Bonnie was missing from security breach, having been destroyed most likely by Monty, but perhaps getting to investigate Bonnie's disappearance and being able to change how things go with the security breach lineup would certainly be an interesting mission. If we were meant to truly investigate this, turning the DLC into a bit of a detective game, I think that would be a really compelling and fun storyline. And from what I've seen, we all want justice for Bonnie, especially since we want Papa Freddy to be reunited with Bonnie since he seemingly really misses him. Considering the dialogue from the first recharge station at least, when Gregory asks about Vanny, and Freddy says, "There is no bunny in this pizzaplex, not anymore," in a very somber way. Plus, I mean, I've seen enough animatronic alligator thirst traps on TikTok that I kind of want Monty gone. Yes, it was only the one thirst trap, but it was for Monty, okay? It's rough, man. Well, okay, there was only one for the actual animatronic. There was more for cosplays of the animatronic, but dear God. And finally, in at number 1, Choose Your Guardian. I'm pretty sure you all wanted this, and I'm pretty sure it's the thumbnail for this video. Currently, the Choose Your Guardian concept is the most popular idea for a security breach DLC. Well, at least from ideas that came from fans. The idea behind this was that you'd play through the story again, but this time you'd choose which animatronic would come to defend you instead of Glamrock Freddy. The post on Reddit by user Space Bear suggested Chica and Roxy, with Roxy carrying you instead of hiding inside her stomach. However, unfortunately, I don't think that this idea is very likely. Despite jokes in the Help Wanted DLC that the DLC was not a canon addition to the game and it had no hidden intent or purpose, this was not the case. We know that the DLC is canon and had hidden intent and purpose. However, this DLC, the Choose Your Guardian DLC, would cause too much chaos to the story to actually work well. It would just make too many things confusing, and there is no way that they would make a non-canon DLC in my mind. But I do like this idea, and I think that it should be a mod. We can probably make it work in some way, I'm certain of it. You'd need the voice lines, but I'm pretty sure there are some fans that would be able to recreate the voice for the mod. Getting the actual voice actors would probably be a little too expensive for a mod, but yeah, unfortunately I don't think this is very likely, but hey, maybe it's a good mod.